Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be looking at making a facial soap, and this is slightly different because I'm going to give you the recipe and you can find that recipe linked in the description below. Take a click on it and you can download a free PDF with all of the instructions on. Now we're going to be looking at this from the point of view of some of the oils that we're going to use for this facial. So the solid oils that we're going to use are palm oil. Now we're using 15% palm oil, there's 20% coconut oil, and then we're also going to throw a couple of other ingredients in there. So whilst I weigh out my cocoa butter here, we're just going to go through why I've chosen some of these ingredients. So within this we've got a base of kind of palm, coconut and olive oil. Now palm oil, coconut oil and cocoa butter, olive oil, things like that are all really good nourishing for the skin. Now what's really important to understand is that when a soap goes through a saponification process, there is no guarantee that any of the physical properties that a oil or butter has will go through into the soap. However, we are superfatting, so you are going to get some of the unsaponifiables in all of these come through and sit on the skin afterwards. So really what I've been looking at is the sorts of oils that are really good for the skin and using them in here. Now, cocoa butter that we're putting in right now is a really excellent butter on the skin, and you'll find that a lot of black people will use cocoa butter on their skin because it's very hydrating, very moisturizing, and it's a very, very good butter to use on your skin. The same goes for things like shea butter, which is the next butter we're going to put in. And again, you've got some really nice moisturising aspects to a shea butter, and that's why it's going back into. That's why it's going into this recipe, because we want to make sure that we get this really kind of beautiful, luxurious soap. Now, with all of these butters and with so little coconut oil, you are going to find that it's not going to be an overly kind of big bubble recipe, but it's going to be quite a tight bubble recipe, and that's going to be really good for the skin, and also it's going to wash off really, really nicely. So what we're going to do is just get the shea butter here, and as you can see we've got about 15% palm oil, 20% coconut oil, 12% cocoa butter and 8% shea butter, and that's giving us about 55% solid oils to around about 45% of the liquid oils. So you're going to get a relatively hard bar with the clays that are going in a little bit later on. That will give you a really nice kind of hard soap that should be relatively long lasting, quite a nice tight bubble, and that's going to carry some of the activated charcoal and the kaolin clay, which is added a little bit later on through this soap. So once we've got all of those bits weighed out, we're going to get this into the microwave and just very, very gently bring this down so it's fully melted. So what we'll do is we'll get that into the microwave now, melt it down, and we'll come back to put our liquid oils in. So we've melted down those oils here, and we've just made sure it's nice and gentle so we're not losing anything from them. And then what we're going to put into here is our liquid oil. So first of all, we're going to start off with some castor oil. Now castor oil is brilliant for kind of supporting the bubble. So whilst we have got a great big bubble going on in this bar, the castor oil is going to be there to support that bubble, and also castor oil has got some really nice skin properties. So again, chosen that at a little bit higher. You can go up to kind of 7 or 8% with castor oil, and I've chosen to go up to about 6% on this one. So we'll pop that in. Now I use these little pump bottles for oils I'm using small amounts for, and it just means I can pump out a relatively small amount of oil without having to kind of tip and pour and things like that. So I find those quite useful. Now we're going to pop some olive oil in here, and olive oil is about 20% of this recipe. Olive oil at the moment is quite expensive. There's been a number of droughts within kind of the Spanish and the Italian olive oil growing regions, and that has affected olive oil prices. So if you're finding that it's difficult to get olive oil, because this recipe doesn't require you to swirl anything, you could go with pomace, or you could look at substituting that olive oil out for another lightweight oil. It's going to give you a similar kind of feel to the skin, but it's going to be less expensive. So you can always exchange these, but do make sure if you're exchanging any of these oils to pop them through a lye calculator before you then start making the soap. Next up here we've got some hemp oil. Now I like hemp oil on the skin, and I often use hemp oil within things like body butters and kind of leave-on products, because it's a really soothing product and I love it. And again, we're going with about 6% of hemp oil in here. Once again, is anything of that going to survive the saponification process? Who knows, but we're going to kind of give it a go. Now the next up here is apricot kernel oil. Now apricot kernel oil is again a really lovely lightweight oil, but what it does do is it sinks into the skin very, very quickly, so it can give you a high moisturization without feeling oily, and I really like that apricot kernel oil within my soaps, so that's going in there. And then our final one here, and again lots of moisturizing, lots of good skin qualities in here, is our avocado oil. So that one's going to go in here. So you can see that our breakdown is roughly 50-50, more towards the solid oil, so we get a harder bar, it's easier to unmold, and so on and so forth. So let's get our lye solution in here, and I made this previously, and I'm working at around about 30 to 35 degrees C. So we'll get that little bit in here, and we'll just bring this one up to an emulsion, and we'll go a little bit past it, probably into a kind of thin to medium trace. Now you can either choose to pre-hydrate your clays, which I do suggest. What I did was I just kind of chucked them in once it was done, and you can do that as well. Essentially what I want to do is use the clay as kind of a mild exfoliation on the skin, and I do want it to not necessarily absorb too much water, so that it's sitting in the soap. So you can see there I've come to a really nice thick trace. And what I want to do now is get this separated out into two batches. Now into one batch we're going to use quite a large amount of kaolin clay, and in the other batch we're going to use a large amount of activated charcoal. Now kaolin clay is great for the skin. Kaolin clay has been used for many years for face masks and is used for that reason. It also kind of absorbs lots of excess oil, so if you do have quite dry skin you need to be a little bit careful with kaolin clay, but it is the most mild of the clays and it is worth kind of putting in there. And in the other side we're going to put activated charcoal. Now activated charcoal again is great for kind of pulling out those impurities from the skin, and it also behaves as a kind of exfoliator on the skin, but it's a very, very mild exfoliator. So both of those work really nicely for our facial soap. Now I've put the fragrance in there as well. Now this is an essential oil blend, and it is going to thin the soap down a wee bit. Now this is essentially a lavender and tea tree. Now lavender is a wonderful essential oil on the skin. It's actually one of the only essential oils you can use neat on the skin, but I recommend that if you are using these essential oils you do just test them on your skin beforehand. Now lavender you can use straight away. If you want to test the tea tree oil that's in this, I recommend putting around about 1 drop of the tea tree oil into about 30 drops of a carrier oil like olive or apricot kernel, and then just using that to test on the skin, but you should be absolutely fine with them. So what I've done is I've added 30 grams here of our kaolin clay into this first mix, and what you'll see is it actually thickens up quite quickly. That's fine, I don't mind that. I'm not necessarily looking at this to be fully incorporated into the soap, because I want some of those pockets of kaolin clay to be around to give the soothing effect onto the skin. So we're going to get that mixed into there, and you'll see how that's kind of thickened up quite quickly. Don't mind the lumps, they're all going to thin out eventually, and even if you've got little pockets in there it's not going to be a huge deal breaker. And then into our other one we've got the activated charcoal. Now do be careful with activated charcoal. As you'll see here it puffs up quite easily, and I do get a little bit left on the surface of the table. There we go. See, it just puffs up and it just kind of goes everywhere, but that's fine. We'll give it a wipe up in a minute. So let's get this mixed in. Now both of these going in dry are starting to absorb some of the water, some of the oils and some of the moisture from the soap. So adding them dry like this is going to thicken your soap up quicker. But as I'm going for kind of a layered style in this soap, I don't have a problem with that. If you do want to avoid that, look at the mess I'm making there. If you want to try and avoid that, what you want to do with your clays and your things like activated charcoal is actually mix them into a paste first with some water and allow them to absorb that. And they need a good hour to absorb that, just to make sure that they're fully hydrated and they're not going to change the way that these the soap is going to act, or the batter is going to act. So what I'm just going to do is run my stick blender through here just to get rid of any of those clumps. Again, I'm not trying to get this 100% smooth and neat and tidy, but I just want to make sure everything is incorporated. And you'll spot now that this is going to thicken up quite a lot. So that's that one there, and we'll get rid of any of the extra from our stick blender just by tapping it off there. And you can see that's come to kind of a really nice medium trace. And then what we'll do is just get that one poured into the bottom there and give it a little bit of a tap down. So that's that one there, and then what we'll do is just exactly the same here with the activated charcoal section. And the lavender and tea tree works really nicely. It's not overly strong, and I've only gone up to realistically around about I think it's probably 0.8% of the whole soap, so it's not overly strong, it's not overly fragranced, but both of those essential oils are going to be very good for the skin. The lavender is a nice soothing oil, and the tea tree has an astringency to it which helps with any kind of blemishes and nicks and redness. So both of those are really good for the skin. So let's pop in our activated charcoal section here. Pop that one in on the top, and you'll just see as I take this away in a second how thick that has become, but that's absolutely fine. We'll give it a little shake down and get everything just kind of together. And now let's just spoon the rest of our soap on the top here, and we are going to mount it up a little bit. We're just going to get both the additional or the extra bit of white and black here up onto the top. And because it is thickening up quite well, what we're going to use is just a little spoon to create some indents and texture on the top, and we'll leave it overnight to saponify. So we'll just get the rest of this up, pop a little bit of music on, and I'll join you back for the cut. I've already unmolded this now. I'm going to pop it in and see what it's like inside. So I'm going to use my multi-bar cutter here. Got a little bit of a additional colour on the side there that I didn't want, so just taking that off, and let's get this cut for you. Just going to pop into the multi-bar just because it's easier to kind of get some nice even bars out of this one, and there's no real kind of pattern that we're looking at trying to achieve through it. So just checking there that all of the they're actually making the same note, so that they're all at the same tension, and therefore it's all going to go through nice and smoothly. And just apply a nice even pressure through the bar on that, and just ease off slightly to get to the end until it goes through. And let's take a look at the inside of the bar. It's just a half and half. It looks a little bit like an orca, but that's basically your facial bar, and you're getting the best of both worlds of the kaolin clay and the activated charcoal in there. And it's just a really lovely bar of soap to use on your face. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me grow and allows me to make more videos and tutorials for all of you. When you subscribe, don't forget to click the bell icon if you'd like to get notified when a new video is uploaded. And thanks a lot, Soapsters. I'll see you again next time.